0243 hours, a single sonar ping, and a return echo that didn't belong to anything on any chart ever drawn. Not a whale, not a wreck, not a pipeline. The echo was geometric, hard-edged, perfectly linear, a signature that whispered of something artificial, buried inside the seabed itself. The acoustic intelligence team aboard the Virginia-class submarine USS Colorado isolated the anomaly within seconds, a repeating pattern of right angles and parallel surfaces deep below the thermal layer. The signal geometry suggested a tunnel, 5 meters wide, running nearly true north for more than a kilometer. The digital spectrogram lit up with a comb of echoes, each spaced at near-perfect intervals, betraying the presence of reinforced cavities inside the seabed. The sonar watch replayed the tapes frame by frame. The tunnel's walls reflected sound like a glass box at the bottom of the sea. Too clean, too perfect, too unnatural for geology. 300 meters below the Strait of Hormuz, Iran had built something they believed was invisible. A network of undersea tunnels designed to deliver combat swimmers and miniature submarines directly beneath the keels of American warships. Reinforced with fiberglass and concrete, and hidden beneath the ocean floor, where no satellite, no drone, and no surface vessel could reach. For years it worked. The tunnels were ghosts, undetectable, untouchable, and positioned to bypass every defensive layer a carrier strike group could deploy. Iranian commanders were confident. The seabed was their fortress, the depth was their armor, the silence was their shield. They had one flaw. The ocean already knew it. And aboard a nuclear submarine running dark in the deep, an American sonar team had just found the door. To understand what those tunnels meant, you have to understand what was designed to come out of them. The Gator-class swimmer delivery vehicle. Not a torpedo, not a surface drone, not a fast attack craft. A battery-powered miniature submarine built from fiberglass composites, engineered for one purpose and one purpose only. Silence, no diesel engine, no magnetic signature, no cavitation trail. Just the faint rotation of a single electric propeller turning at 4 knots, hugging the seabed where passive sonar cannot reach. A 2-man cockpit forward houses a driver and a navigator. The rear compartment carries 4 to 6 combat swimmers in full kit. Mission loadouts include limpet mines, sabotage charges, underwater cutting tools, and enough air supply for hours of submerged stalking. Operational range with a full team, 30 kilometers. Enough to cross the entire Strait of Hormuz and plant explosives on the hull of a billion-dollar destroyer without ever breaking the surface, without ever being detected, and without ever leaving a trace. The SDV's slow speed is not a weakness, it is the weapon. At 4 knots, the vehicle moves too quietly and too close to the bottom for most anti-submarine warfare sensors to register. In the right thermal conditions, it can pass directly beneath the hull of an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, and the ship's crew would never know it was there. Fleet defense doctrine is built around threats from the sky and the open ocean. Missiles, torpedoes, fast attack craft. The geometry of protection radiates outward and upward. But beneath the mud, directly under the formation, there is a blind spot, and a network of tunnels feeding swimmer delivery vehicles into that blind spot changes the entire calculus of naval defense. The tunnels don't need to win a battle, they just need to deliver a swimmer with a mine to the right place at the right time. One breach in a destroyer's hull, one carrier forced to withdraw for emergency repair, one choke point rendered too dangerous for transit. The strategic value is not measured in explosions, it's measured in hesitation. It's measured in the moment a fleet commander decides the water beneath his ships can no longer be trusted. This is why the geometric echo mattered. It wasn't a sonar curiosity, it wasn't a footnote in a watch log, it was a potential breach in the shield that protects American power projection across the most contested waterway on Earth. The question was no longer whether the tunnels existed. The question was whether they could be destroyed without anyone hearing the funeral. The USS Colorado retrieved core samples from the tunnel wall using a remotely operated vehicle deployed from the starboard bay. Each fragment was sealed in nitrogen, tagged with a November 2025 timestamp, and transferred through a strict chain of custody to the Naval Research Laboratory for materials analysis. On the surface, the tunnel wall slices looked unremarkable. Pale, dense, a chalky skin beneath a glassy sheen. The kind of material that looks engineered and competent under normal light. Under a scanning electron microscope, the truth surfaced. The tunnel liners were riddled with voids, porosity rates cataloged at 18%. air pockets, and resin-starved seams threaded through the composite like rot through a tree. Fiberglass strands designed to bridge cracks and distribute load had delaminated from the concrete matrix, pulling away in entire bundles and leaving exposed pathways for saltwater intrusion. In some cross-sections, the fibers had separated so completely that there was nothing holding the layers together except gravity and habit. The composite was a patchwork, uneven resin distribution across every sample, Portland cement mixed with crushed shell and low-grade aggregate, incomplete curing along the outer skin, a signature of rushed construction or substandard mixing. Where the pressure should have been absorbed and distributed, the liner was brittle, more like a candy shell than armor. In one sample, a void the size of a walnut sat less than 2 centimeters from the interior surface. That single void, under load, could propagate a fracture across the entire tunnel wall in milliseconds. The forensic conclusion was unanimous. These liners were not engineered for the forces they would face. They were engineered to look like they could handle those forces. There is a difference, and at 300 meters beneath the surface of the ocean, that difference is fatal. At 300 meters depth, hydrostatic pressure exceeds 3 megapascals. These liners were never built to absorb that kind of force dynamically. Under static load, under the slow, constant squeeze of the water column on a calm day, they survived. But under a sudden overpressure, a cavitation pulse, a shock wave, a breach, the structure would not flex, it would not absorb, it would not redistribute. It would shatter. Ariane had built a glass box at the bottom of the sea, and they had no idea how thin the glass was. Hydrostatic pressure is the silent constant of the deep. For every 10 meters of descent, the ocean adds another atmosphere of force, 14.7 pounds per square inch, pressing from every direction simultaneously. At 300 meters, that's over 430 psi bearing down on every square inch of exposed surface. The same pressure found inside the hydraulic system of a bulldozer. Except this pressure never cycles off. It never releases. It is relentless. Uniform, patient. The tunnels were 5 meters in diameter. Liner thickness, 30 centimeters. The hoop stress formula, pressure times radius divided by wall thickness, defines the failure threshold. With a brittle, porous liner already compromised by voids and delamination, even a brief overpressure spike lasting less than a millisecond can push the stress past the material's tensile limit. Micro cracks become fractures. Fractures become a breach. And at 300 meters, a breach doesn't leak, it detonates. The ocean doesn't seep in, it hammers inward with the accumulated weight of every meter of water above. The tunnel doesn't flood, it implodes. The insight was precise and elegant. You don't need a warhead. You don't need a torpedo. You don't need a cruise missile or a bomb or a commando team. You need a pulse, a controlled cavitation event, a rapid collapse of a vapor bubble near the tunnel wall, generates a shock wave that travels through water at 1,500 meters per second. When that wave strikes the seabed, the energy couples into the buried cavity. The difference in acoustic impedance between water, sediment, and tunnel liner amplifies the effect. Inside the cylindrical void, the pressure spike reflects and converges, multiplying force with each reflection. Laboratory simulations show amplification factors up to 8 times the initial overpressure. A collapsing cavitation bubble at the liner surface can unleash peak pressures between 1,000 and 10,000 megapascals in microseconds. For context, the tunnel liner fails at 5 point. The tunnel's own geometry becomes its executioner. The cylindrical shape that was supposed to distribute pressure instead focuses it. The voids that were supposed to be invisible instead become pathways for fracture. The engineering that was supposed to make the tunnel invincible is precisely what makes it vulnerable. The ocean doesn't negotiate, the liner doesn't bend, the physics is absolute. The Colorado held station. Her S-6G nuclear reactor kept her silent and stationary beneath the thermal layer, invisible to every sensor the Iranians had deployed. The operational clock measured in days, not hours. That is the edge nuclear power buys. Unlimited submerge time, no need to surface, no need to snorkel. No signature to betray her presence. The submarine could wait longer than the tunnel could stand. The order arrived through encrypted channels. The combat systems officer initiated launch of an unmanned underwater vehicle from the submarine's belly bay. The vehicle carried a custom acoustic pulse generator. Capacitors charged. Targeting solution uploaded from the sonar team's data. Mission timeline locked at under 40 minutes from deployment to pulse. The UUV slipped from the hull and ghosted along the seabed. its signal masked by thermal gradients and the ambient clutter of the strait. It reached the designated position meters from the tunnel wall and held. At 0254 Greenwich Mean Time, the capacitors discharged. A vapor bubble, the size of a basketball, collapsed in microseconds, generating a focused overpressure event. 5 megapascals delivered in less than a millisecond. The shock wave struck the tunnel wall at 1,500 meters per second and coupled through the sediment into the buried cavity. Inside the tunnel, every void became a conduit. Every resin-starved seam became a fault line. Every micro-crack connected to the next in a chain reaction that crossed the liner in less time than it takes a human nerve to fire. The liner did not flex, it fractured. And the ocean, held back for years by 30 centimeters of flawed composite, finished the job. For a moment, nothing visible, no flash, no plume, no explosion breaking the surface. Then the Colorado sonar team sent a second ping. The return was unrecognizable. No longer a clean geometric echo with crisp right angles and parallel surfaces, just ragged, chaotic scatter. The acoustic signature of rubble. An ROV deployed from the Colorado confirmed the result at 0317. Video feed showed jagged debris, fractured liner segments, and displaced silt where the 5-meter bore had been. No coherent tunnel geometry remained. The so-called invincible tunnel was now just another collapsed cavity on the seafloor. The cost analysis tells its own story. 1 unmanned vehicle, 1 acoustic pulse, 0 warheads detonated, 0 explosives used, 0 casualties on either side. Total expenditure, a fraction of what a single cruise missile costs. In exchange, a tunnel network that took years to construct and represented a fundamental shift in asymmetric naval warfare was erased in less than a second of applied physics. The engineers, the planners, the commanders who built their entire strategy around these tunnels being untouchable, all of it rendered irrelevant by a collapsing bubble and the weight of the sea. Iran's tunnel program was built on a single assumption, that what the ocean hides, the ocean protects. The assumption was wrong. The ocean doesn't protect anything. It pressurizes everything. And a structure with 18% porosity at 300 meters depth isn't hidden. It's waiting to fail. It just needs someone to give it a reason. Carrier strike groups resumed their patrol patterns. No course deviations, no speed changes, no emergency briefings. The operational rhythm of American naval power in the Strait continued as if nothing had happened. Because to the fleet, this wasn't a crisis, it was a Tuesday. But in planning rooms on both sides of the world, the implications settled permanently. Hydrostatic overpressure had moved from theoretical footnote to operational doctrine. For the first time, the ocean itself had been weaponized. Not with explosives, not with torpedoes, but with physics tuned to exploit the enemy's own engineering failures. The water did the killing. The bubble just asked it to. No engineering feat is truly invincible. No structure survives the weight of its own flaws. And no amount of secrecy, no amount of depth, no amount of propaganda protects a glass box at the bottom of the sea once someone hands the ocean a hammer. The tunnels are gone. The physics remains. If this changed how you think about underwater warfare, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, stay sharp.